I remember the day when I decided to be honest. I was sitting in my doctor's waiting room, rehearsing over and over what I was going to say to him. And my thoughts started to race, as they had done on and off since I was a teenager. And back then, it would happen once or twice a year, but by my late 40s, it was happening every day. And this was why I was sitting in my doctor's waiting room. I had decided that I needed to do something about it, but I was super scared about what it meant. My doctor listened, and then he said a word to me that I was not expecting: ADHD. I told him he was wrong, that I had never been assessed, that this was not who I am, but he said, take the test. And I scored very high on the test. When I told people close to me, people responded. It was a 50-50 split to how they responded. Some of them said, no, you're wrong, that's not you. You have just some things that are in your way and you'll get over it, and you don't have ADHD. Other people said, well, yes, that makes sense. You didn't know? No, I didn't. I want to be honest about what came next, because I think some people have a different expectation. I think most people expect relief. Some people do experience that. This was not my experience. What happened was I started crying everywhere. Crying in meetings, at work. Without warning, I would just be sitting there and be overcome with emotions and feelings and disorientation, and suddenly I'd have to run out or get out of the Zoom call or something. I just couldn't stop. I didn't understand what was happening to me. I would learn later that I also struggle with emotional regulation. It's not a strength of mine, I assure you. But at the time, I just thought things were falling apart. I started reading books. I started listening to podcasts, anything I could find. And unfortunately, at the beginning at least, the reading and the podcasts and all the information just made it worse, because everything I read felt so obvious. Every symptom, every pattern, every struggle I had been carrying quietly for decades, it was all there. And described in such detail, I kept thinking, how did I not know this? How could I have lived so long without nobody seeing this in me? How did I spend 50 years not knowing this about myself? And then came the thought that was harder than all the others. What a waste of a life. I sat with those feelings for such a long time. All my problems suddenly had a name. That should have been a relief, but instead they all rose up like a wall in front of me that I couldn't get over. And then my strengths, the things that had always been things I loved about myself, they began to disappear one by one. Because if my struggles were explained by something that was getting in the way, something that my brain was, my brain wasn't working right, and so were my strengths. I hadn't earned any of my strengths. They were just, I hadn't built them. They were just accidents to me. A malfunctioning system, and I watched them all go one by one, and I just didn't know where I was anymore. This went on for a very long time, unfortunately. Longer than I expected and longer than I would wish on anybody, I think. I was encouraged to try Ritalin, especially for the racing thoughts. But approval took a long time. And while I waited, I kept reading. Kept trying to find some answers that sat with me and made sense and helped me to understand and helped me to have something of positivity towards what I was learning about myself. The first book that had a big impact on me was this book, ADHD 2.0 by Hallowell and Ratey. It helped me to think of my ADHD with some kindness and see it partly as a strength and not just a limitation. Jessica McCabe's YouTube channel was also excellent. I also bought the book. And again, it helped me to understand that I'm not alone, that it's more than just me out there. I knew that in theory, but in the moment, other people seemed to be so positive about it, and all I could see were the problems. But her YouTube channel and this book helped me to see it in a positive light and something that I could overcome. And the other book at the beginning that really helped me was Rich and Pink's book, Small Talk. I think partly because they were coming at it from an adult. They didn't discover it when they were young and flexible and everything could change in an instant. They understood what it felt like to be an older adult, being diagnosed with something that you didn't know, struggling to work out how you could overcome any of it at 50 years old. When the Ritalin came, it helped, but it was not a cure. But it did quieten my mind a little, enough for me to think a little bit more clearly about what was going on, what was happening, and what I could do about it. And I think slowly, carefully, things started to make sense to me. Some of it I had already known, things like I already knew that if I walked for 30 minutes to a cafe, I could work for an hour and do it really well. And then I could walk home, work for another hour really well. I hadn't yet learnt that exercise really helps an ADHD brain to stay on track and get things done. People would tell me to get used to loud noises and working under bright lights and tell me off when I would work in the dark. But I was starting to understand why I was so sensitive to the noises and why I was so sensitive to the light and how it helped me to concentrate to get rid of both. I stopped apologizing for who I was. I started to build a life, I think, that actually started to fit the brain that I had. And when that started, so many things changed. I learned that the optimism that I often had with any new project and the risk-taking that I often had with trying new things and giving things a go were strengths, but also I needed to manage them. Don't overdo it. I learned that my creativity should be freed to just give it a go and explore and see what can be done and not to hold it back too much. I learned, and this took the longest, how to feel the feels, how to understand my emotions, to understand that I could go from 0 to 100 with my emotional response in seconds. I started to learn how to regulate that a little bit and keep it under control. and that was amazing. That diagnosis was more than 5 years ago, and I have not had one single racing thought since then, which is amazing. I want to say that again because when I was sitting in that waiting room rehearsing what to say, I could not have imagined this version of my life, not at all. And I share all this stuff for one reason, because if you are somewhere in the middle of you working out how you exist in the middle of ADHD, how you are trying to reconcile the past and all the things that you've struggled with and trying to embrace all the strengths that you have, I want you to know you're not alone. The relief I didn't feel at the beginning, I now feel. It did happen. It took longer to arrive than I was expecting, but it did arrive. What I hope to share on this channel, Sketchbooks of a Creative, is everything that I've found along the way over those 5 years. And I have done extensive reading and learning during that time. And I have found ways to release myself into productivity and creativity, to quieten the things that used to get in my way, and to allow myself to be me in this new space that I find myself in. How to be both creative and productive, and not just productive. I think how to thrive and not just manage. I hope you find on this channel things that are really useful to you. They are things that I have found that are really useful to me, and they are things that I've heard are really useful to other people. That's what I hope to share. Not to help you to become an artist necessarily, or a leader, or a sports person, or whatever your pursuit is, but to help you to understand how you can be you as you pursue those things. I think if you can, you'll find that ADHD is more than you think. It certainly is for me. So, thank you for joining me. I hope together we can get somewhere. See you soon.